Carsten Frerk is the co-editor of the German Humanist Press Service and an author of several books. He will talk about finances and organization of the German term Weltanschauung, which literally means worldview, and it covered both religions but also non-religious worldviews. Welcome, Carsten Frerk.
This is my first public speech in English, and I try in the hope that more people will understand as I would speak in German. If you ask someone who is the most successful companies in the world, you get answers such as Exxon, Mobil, Shell, Chevron, Gazprom, British Petrol, PetroChina, and so on, so on. 8 of the 20s are in the oil industry. Interestingly, the only global business with a global market footprint and high profit turnover is not in the list, the Catholic Church. We can think of the Catholic Church as the best business idea ever conceived. In the monotheistic business, the Catholic Church is a market leader. Founded 2,000 years ago in a small province in the Roman Empire, the firm got underway and now had its headquarters located in Rome. Starting with a branch manager, 12 employees, and a donkey, 400 years later, a dominant imperial state-owned company, that's what Rolf Bergmeier told us on Friday, and more than 1,000 years later, the only company represented in all continents of the earth and in all countries without North Korea. Do you know a company with such a history? A company that survived all the crises, splits, a brief threat of bankruptcy in the 16th century, has turned around, and despite of all discrepancies between marketing and actual praxis, is still the market leader. The current situation in Western Europe, the Catholic Church and Christian churches earn as much as billionaires today. Let us look to some bigger countries. In Italy, the church accepted paying not a 1.1 billion euro that the Catholic Church is not state religion. An Italian must pay 1.8%, the 8 per mille, in taxes to the church or other organizations. And so they get in a year around about 1 billion a year. The state gives for example, property tax exemptions and government salaries, religious educations, more than 6 billion euros to the church a year. In Spain, there's a similar tax. They will get 215 million and 2 parts more, 500 million paid by the state for employees of the church. And for more financing ecclesiastical institutions, the state pays for further 3 billion euro annually. In Germany, the church obtained 8% income tax plus and gets a revenue of 9.3 billion euros a year. And obtained, due to various legal reasons, further 19.3 billion euros for its facilities. And it is not Caritas and Diakonie in Germany. There are more than 44 billions paid by public money. In France, a voluntary levy is collected by the church. The church can expect a contribution. Almost half of the Catholics are paying. On the emerge of that is 130 million euros. More cash is taken by donations and income from real estate. However, all buildings of the church before 1905 erected are obtained by public expense, and also the Catholic schools receive government subsidies. In Britain, the Church of England is financed primarily from the proceeds of the assets, a reason why it defends its hedge fund so vehemently. There are signs that these sources of financing are changing. Also, this has added up no one, but in Europe it's likely to estimate the turnover of Christian churches can be around 80 to 100 billion a year. If you were to a worldwide turnover of the Christian business, you would not be wrong at 1 trillion euros. And the secularizations. The secularists in Europe, notable secular organizations in Europe are assigned to difficult conditions, of which I would like to mention 3 essentials. First, they operate primarily as social welfare. Similar to religious organizations, they get state support. Examples include Norway, Belgium, and Germany, the Humanist Association in Berlin and Nuremberg. Second, it is a counter-movement against religious supremacy. Examples of this can be seen in Poland and Bavaria, where structural violence is organized and promoted. Third, it is an unbroken political tradition. An example of this can be Great Britain, where the National Secular Society was founded in 1866 and the British Humanist Association in 1896 under the name of the Union of Ethical Society. It is a proud heritage. 1881, the German Freethinkers League was founded in Frankfurt by Ludwig Büchner and Wilhelm Liebknecht and had over 650,000 members by 1930, but was shut down by the Nazis. But after the restoration of West Germany, and also with the SED in power in older East Germany, they could not be refounded. The tradition was broken down. What does the church sell exactly when they dominate the market? Let's consider the various segments. First, for those who accept and needed certainty. Be in an afterlife, kind of like immortality, a guardian angel, something an angry kind of father of the gospel truths, it's sure as the amen in the church. Second, projections. Terms as peace, family, happiness, charity are projection of which each and every believer is his specific ideas, wishes, and needs of projects individually variable according to age, education, and gender. Do not ask for it, and everyone thinks its projection is a far true face. Third, emotion. This is the essence. This is evident in the Bible, and the stories illustrate best. If you know, perhaps in Germany, the publisher Axel Caesar Springer, Axel Caesar, was deeply religious, and one wonders where the publisher has the idea for the Bild. That's the German leading yellow press magazine. Then the idea is that the Bild is a modern version of the Bible, or rather the way around, that the Bild developed along the lines of the Bible. In both cases, the same sex to crime stories, murder from genocide that reports about various sexual practices from Samenklau, incest tolerated, jealousy and hate, murder and dissidents. These are the stories of the Bible and of the Bild. These are poor emotions. These are poor emotions, fear, hope, lust, envy, and fear, all is served. And not without reason, both the 10 Commandments are placed on the statue broke, and Biden, the headlines of the image in large letters, they reinforce the emotional statement. 4, they have rituals. Christianity has 4 large events, festivals throughout the year, in spring, early, summer, autumn, and winter. Easter, Thanksgiving, and Christmas, all connected with elaborate preparations and previous weeks before, pilgrimages, processions, parades, and vows. Holy Week, painting Easter eggs and decorate the garden and burn Pentecostal fire and bike, wit of roast and the Whitsun Carnival celebration decorates the houses and the church for Thanksgivings, and the perfection of all the rituals, the season of Advent and Christmas with Advent wreath, cake, gift craft, Christmas tree, obtained decorating, etc., etc. They had to do all the year through, and every year the same, each and every one who grew in it, and with the rituals and their own role in helping older. Women, men, and children are employed throughout the years. 5, social groups cohesion. At the Sunday service in the church, at the same time are 2 different events in one room instead. The priest at the altar, that's church, and the church goers in the ship, a social event a weekly gathering of the community, see you, talk to each other, know each other, which strengthens the cohesion. And in all villages, there's one of these business centers located. It's called church. So what has secularism have to offer? First, the only thing you can be certain about is uncertainty. Everything is constantly questioned. Belief and certainty are more as a stupid religion or something for the losers. Second, rationality and a scientific worldview. Everything has a naturalistic explanation in a world without ghosts, goblins, flying teapots, and gods. Third, intellectualism. There is a constant discussion. Your opinions are subject to debate, no opinion without contradiction. Four, rituals, none. A typical question, almost worried, secularists ask what we are doing this year. Five, individuality. Religions monopolize communities, and secularists leave people alone largely, in response to questions that you have to decide yourself. What does that mean in everyday life? A small example. A young couple has lived together for about 10 years. Now they have a 7-year-old child. Will you marry? No, we do not need marriage. Have you ever thought of organizing a symbolic reinforcement of your union? Yes, but we could not. Why? We want to go to a mature tree, wrap our arms, our grasps of your hands, and say, we want to be with each other like the tree, be resistant to defy resistance. Oh yes, that's right. Why you don't do that? She wants an almond tree and he wants an oak tree. Questions of the couple, can you, as organized, give us a tree? We do not pick up this decision. That's simple, but that's important. An atheist once analyzed, if we want to be successful, we would have to be like the churches. Do we want that? But is that the wrong perspective? Let us develop ethical brickstones. The individual who is looking for value systems, he can check whether they will suit him or not. Finally, hopefully, they are not falling into having dogma preached from the top. We should start from the 4 principles which most we self-identify as atheists or humanists or agnostics. These are, first, the individual self-determination. Second, life is here and now. There is no other. Third, no power for authorities, gods, or other spirits. And 4, respect for those who respect me as well. These basic principles get restated, and all the time people are invited to decide for themselves if they are suitable to them. Another question, do we need a call for revolt? Carlos Deschner wrote, murderers write history, or more generally, a trace of violence is a basis for success. Christianity has been somewhat tamed by the Enlightenment and lost its market share. Now we have Muslims, the mode of action of potential violence. This requires only a few concrete examples: 9/11 attacks in Madrid and London, and the German government before it falls to its knees. There is an organization called Islam Conference. The organized religions are all represented, though only about 25% of Muslims in Germany are represented by a designed person. The remaining 80% of non-organized Muslims, or so-called Muslims, are represented by a few intellectuals. Conversely, the writings from humanists and secularists in Germany to political committees and ministers responsible for clarifying discussions, put forward concerns, etc., are not taken seriously, not even answered. This dilemma is a dilemma that atheists and secularists pose no threat to society. They like peace and pluralism. But we also have successes. We can see in recent times that Europe is self-secularizing. Only 20% of the population in countries like United Kingdom and Germany claim Christian affiliation. But that does not mean that the number of organized non-religion has increased in Germany. I normally begin lectures on my church investigations by saying I have good and I have bad news. The good news is churches have lost the youth. The bad news, we haven't won. But this supposedly bad news is actually remarkably good news, because the young people in Germany mostly think for themselves and do not need any prayer leaders or secular organizations. What do we want to see more of? Yes, of course, we want and need organized groups. Not only because we live in a Christian-branded democracy where only primary associations are perceived, but also because we need to professionalize our work, because we need women and men who have time to wander, to formulate texts, who currently are not available even on weekends. And for all that is need funding. Member-supported freethinker groups have not been successful in Germany, apart from the Freethinkers League discussed earlier. One can speak in the past few years of unprecedented success in public activism. This is evident not only in the stronger defensive efforts of the churches, but also in the marvelous achievement of individual events of campaigns that have something in common. However, there are only a few persons in the background. The principles of a media market activism was employed most effectively by the Giordano-Bruno Foundation, which has left the retro charm, dusty homemade banners and so on far behind and campaigned with professional quality. The GBS board sparked a veritable explosion of religion and criticism on the church in recent years, with its philosophers, social scientists, lawyers, artists, authors, marine biologists, psychologists, etc., leaving old hate Babel debates in the dust. At the same time, it submitted ideas for the future of society which have never been heard before. Another, and possibly more important example, is the German bus campaign in 2010. Yesterday evening, it was decorated as the most successful campaign. Started on the initiative of one person, Peter Ebler, it then became apparent, sometimes was very exciting. People and supporters were reluctant at first, and then, however, campaign was already up and running when more people joined and targeted members of regional organizations on the spot, co-organizing. They immediately and enthusiastically joined in, and the campaign grew from more. This relationship between initiatives outside of the associations and the adoption by the secular organized is a field that has not been discussed sufficiently. To put it more strongly, the organizations put a lot of imagination and thought more into decisions made. The individual initiatives are lacking sometimes for durability. This potential to combine the two, recognizing the strengths and support each other's. These examples show the importance of personal commitment, which actually is humanism. Give your time and commitment to organization as it appreciated. Also, this convention is a success for secularism in Germany. One should think back that after World War II in West Germany, when first atheist conference happened, the youngest among us were even born, but it was the first atheist conference in Fulda, 1991, 21 years ago. So this convention could also be said the second atheist convention in Germany, 21 years later, and I hope that the third conference will not have the duration of 21 years. That would be 2033, and I hope I'm still around when the third atheist conference will be happened. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Carsten. I think it's an inspiring view on the Catholic Church as a business model. And yeah, it's good to ask what are they offering the people. And like we are complaining on big companies that they are offering just images or something and not selling us proper stuff like Apple, like overpricing stuff. But actually they're not selling anything. They're just selling ideas, emotions. When you think of the two big feasts, they have Easter and Christmas. And all the rituals that we have are actually very often non-Christian, like a Christmas tree is nothing very Christian. Giving presents is just a thing that happens 200 years ago. And eggs are not Christians, little rabbits and stuff. I think it might be a good idea to claim these days back from the church, that they occupied a long time ago.
That's right.
And that might be a nice idea for a whatever campaign or something, because I find that many people who are secular don't really know what to do on Christmas Eve. They don't want to behave stupid, and they say, "Oh well, it's not so important," and maybe they have bad remindings of their youth, and they somehow behave strange to me. They don't feel comfortable on these days.
Okay.
And so I think it's a very good idea to make them feel comfortable again with, enjoying, for example, springtime, or enjoying the shortest day in the winter, called 21st or 24th or whatever, no? Yep. So do something that makes them more consider that this is not a Christian tradition.
Thank you, Peter. That's Peter Ibler. He founded the German bus campaign.
No, it's...
No, Peter.
Actually, it was, please stress that Ariane Shireen was the founder of the...
Peter, that's very correct. But I would give more attention to another point. Friends of mine, they have founded a humanistic school in Hamburg. They had a concept of 60 pages. With all these education principles and what we want to do and what we want to do. And then people came who were interested to bring the children to their school, and the people said, "Oh, that's too complicated, that's, I don't know what, and so I'm no pedagogist and no teacher." And so. And then they learned that they only have to say, "We will give a school without fear." Oh, that's great. So they are don't lying. Because they have the concept of education children without fear. But that's the simple message, the projection, while all the people who say, "Oh, there's a school without fear," they have their own memories of their own school experience and said, "Oh no, that's what I want for my children." And so we have to learn, that's my opinion, to make our ideas more simpler, more able for projections of people who are good-willing. We are too complicated.
I'd like to add a thought to what we just heard to this suggestion. The church is very well aware how important it is to occupy these celebrations. And we had a good example last year when the Thalia franchise, bookstore franchise, they're not secular or anything, but they made an advertisement for the rabbit celebration. And there was an uproar throughout the country with Protestant and Catholic prominent people asking people not to buy there anymore. So this is really an important thought, and they are aware of that.
Yeah, and that's very interesting that the churches are there very, very empfindlich, sensitive when you go to their own grounds where they have the people in the minds and say, "Okay, we have another story of that celebration." That's very right.
Question about the bus campaign or other major events that got a lot of publicity. Was there any effect on membership numbers for IPCA or GBS? Do you know sort of successful campaigns with regards to increasing membership numbers in these organizations?
Yes. For example, the Giordano-Bruno Foundation, they had a little rumor in their members, the sponsoring members, of regional groups to find together to have discussions in the cities or something else. And I think before the bus campaign, there were 2 or 3, Michael could say it better, 2 or 3 regional groups, and today it's 30 groups today, and there was a bus campaign, just an initial explosion to say, hey, here we are, and we want to show us, and we want to meet regularly, talk to each other, make campaigns in our regional area, and that was a very great sponsoring of that atheism becomes more public in Germany. And that's also the bus campaign has its main benefit that atheists said, hey, here we are. And in Munich, for example, they made a campaign, just show you.
Ich bin sehr besorgt über die zunehmende wirtschaftliche und auch gesellschaftliche Einflussnahme der freien evangelischen Kirchen. Ich möchte gern wissen, wie du das siehst. Überall werden jetzt gerade neue Gemeindehäuser, Ähnliches gebaut. Also es wird auch sichtbar, was die an Geld hinter sich haben. Wie können wir zukünftig mit diesen Kirchen umgehen?
That's right. We have this situation, but I think it's still always a rand group in the Protestant Church. And it's, I think, an impression what Michael Schmidt-Salomon sometimes said, when all churches are like the EKD, the Protestant Church in Germany, we don't need more criticism of religion. And these Protestant people who search for certainty, for rules, for guidance, they go to the fundamentalism in the Protestantic area or convert to Islam. Because they will find their black and white world with clear rules of good and bad and so on. And so I think it's only a phenomena on the edge, but not so important as when you look on that, you see that, and because you look on that, it's more important as if you have a wider branch. That's my opinion. It's in Germany, I believe, 1% on members, but the public was more percent.
Sir, my honest request to everybody who's present here, today is the last day and last moments also. This presentation opens up new and new avenues for unknown marketed areas. In the era of globalization, marketing will have to be done very aggressively, especially by those who hate marketing. My request is, let us explore many more marketed areas. So market is there, and let us learn market has to be countered by vested interest to good intentions. Sir, thank you very much once again. I would have really missed this beautiful presentation. I will only suggest, let us unite Danke.
I was a little curious about your numbers. Did you say that the funding of the church in Europe was on the order of $1 trillion or euros?
The Christian church in Europe, they make about 100 billion euros a year.
100 billion. Yeah, okay. So that does put it on par with what I think that they have in America. But the crazy thing is what you could actually do with that sort of cash. That's on the order of what it would cost to send a man to the moon from scratch. If I remember rightly, these are the sorts of numbers that make supplying clean water to everyone on Earth look like chump change. You're only in the sort of tens of billions to do this. So what do they actually spend their money on? I mean, is it just keeping up buildings? I mean, these are vast sums of money. This is comparable to what the US military spends annually, within an order of magnitude.
They have to pay their personnel. For example, in Germany, we have 12,000 Catholic priests and 25,000 Protestant pastors, also priests. And each of these guys and girls, women and men and women, cost about 100,000 euros a year. So you can just multiply and say, when it's more about these people, each will cost 100,000 euros a year. That are billions, which then, billions which have only a cost for the personnel. Because that's this principle, in each village they have their point of sale, and that's the church. And that's a basis for their success, because in each village they have an agency.
What's the annual figure for government funding of the Catholic Church?
I have only the figures for Germany, very precisely. The other are estimations. And in Germany, the churches get from these church taxes 9.3 billion. And when you collect all these parts of schools, of kindergartens, and all other things, what they do, then they will get from public money 19.3 billion euros a year.
We do things slightly different in Ireland. The Catholic Church in Ireland claims that it gets no money from the state. The state in Ireland claims it gives no money to the Catholic Church. And they do this because there's an article in our constitution that says that the state shall not endow any religion. The 96% of the primary schools in Ireland are funded by the state. So they are a very, very successful business model. In Ireland especially, because the endowment of religion in Ireland doesn't mean that, or the non-endowment of religion in Ireland doesn't mean that the state won't fund the Catholic Church. And they call it, and they say, the state gives us no money. Yes. I wish I could manage to start up a business like that.
That's obviously the same thing. We are not doing it for the church. We are doing it as a service for society. Yeah?
That's it. That's how it operates.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court has found that the state funding of schools in Ireland is not an endowment of religion, because the Constitution permits the state to give money to parents to religiously educate their children and to respect that. And so the state funding of primary schools in Ireland, all schools, is not the endowment of religion. And it works the same way with hospitals and everything. And you know how much the Catholic Church controls Ireland.
But that's one of the values of such conventions for me, to learn what is in other countries of Europe or the United States or something else. And there are similar arguments, similar argumentations, and very different. That's very, very helpful.
Yeah. It's always the wording. So every time a Catholic leader in Ireland or something like that says a word like indoctrination, you go to the first thing you do is go to the dictionary and see what the dictionary definition of that, and you look, you know that that's not what they mean. That's how I operate now. I write down, if I'm going through a speech that somebody has made, I get the dictionary definition and I put it down there, and I know they mean the opposite. And it just works every time.
That's correct. Yeah.
Just a brief follow-on. If Germany was to stop that 10 billion euro donation, would that essentially cripple the church in Germany? Is the whole thing actually really hanging by a single thread there?
You must divide that. One part is the church as its own. The constitutional church, and they have in Germany the right to become a church tax without help or of their own. That's a second question. And no one in Germany will end this right of the church to get from the members money. That's as every other club or something else. It's a private principle. And when you take all the other parts which are financed, the schools and the kindergarten and the military, I don't know, the Seelsorge, nothing would change. Because that's always the principle that gets very difficult or that's specific for Germany. In Germany, we have the situation that people who pay these church tax can lower their income debt by that money. And so the federal and state and the Bundesländer, the regions, have 3 billion loss of tax income. And that has a traditional reason that the state says it's just an argument that there's so much what the church are doing in the social fields, we give an equivalent to the churches. But that has historical changes. It's a very opposite side. The churches give only 800 million a year to their social services, and the state has 3 billion less income. And that doesn't fit anymore. That was 1950, perhaps correct, but today, no longer. And these information we had to elaborate and to bring to the public.
I was just going to point out that I think a lot of people are willing to pay these church taxes because they think most of it goes to social useful things. And I think it's a very effective thing to point out that 8% only of it really goes to these socially helpful things, and the rest of it pretty much goes into the pocket of the churches. And I think that if you point that out, it actually does make a big difference with people when they hear that. Basically they're just paying the churches. That would be the one thing. And the other thing I just wanted to point out is that it's very things like the bus campaign and also this conference and things like that. In Germany so far, at least for me, I barely heard about the humanists, atheists, Konfessionslosen, the whole movement in Germany, the groups that exist, because they aren't really visible. And so I would just support doing highly visible things in the public sphere, doing things that outrage Christians that then get Germany-wide media coverage, because that's like you pointed out with the GBS, that now they have 30, or now that there are 30 local groups instead of 3, and I just support doing more public campaigns so that you get the people who are supportive of these ideas, because that is a large group in Germany, that they just realize that they can do things, that they can become part of the groups, find other people who are of the same opinion and aren't left out for themselves, pretty much.
Yep. It's for the first aspect, the Caritas legend. Some years ago, we had made a survey, national survey, for an institute where they specialized on that, and asked 1,000 members of churches if the churches would not give very much or nothing to their social institutions or social projects, would that be a reason for you to leave the church? And half of the member of the churches said, if it would be what you say, then I would leave the church. And the younger people, there were 60% who said, if that would be what you ask, then I would leave the church. And so the churches are very interested to show these pictures of what we all do for the humans, the hospitals and the services for the old people and the kindergartens and so on, and they nothing say that they don't pay it. And the second is, it's really great through this convention, and last week we had the Skeptic World Congress in Berlin. It's a feeling with me that Germany and the German organized and not organized secular people opens to their minds to the world. Some years ago, when you look to the secular card of Europe, Germany was a black, in the black area. Nobody knows what happened there, which organizations are doing there, because they're all only dealing with themselves. And that has changed in the last years, and that's very, very good for the future. Okay? Singen wir jetzt?